Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast. Unfortunately, we start today with some rather sad news, and that is that Ben, the co-host, has made a decision to take a step back from helping me host the show, and we respect that decision and we wish him well for the future. But the show must go on, as they say, and that means I'll be going solo today and for the next few episodes, possibly. Do have a couple of people that I could bring in. Maybe you guys have a podcast that you listen to and you like that particular podcast host. If you send me their details, then maybe I can contact them and get them to come on, and maybe I can have a guest co-host every other week or something. And then in between, just fly solo. That's really up to you guys. Let me know. Let me know if you'd like me to host on my own, or if you do like having a co-host. I rather like having a co-host. There's a bit of banter there and someone to bounce off. And share the workload as well, because as you guys could probably appreciate, working full time, I've got a baby, and trying to fit this in as well. If someone else is there to take that weight off, it does help. But at the same time, I'm more than happy to carry on my own, and make sure that the show continues. So because of all that's been going on, it's been difficult for me to nail down a guest. I did have a guest down. That was Lynn Russell, and she's one of the top researchers on near-death experiences in Canada. And unfortunately, we had a lot of technical issues. She had a lot of problems with her computers and with her speaker system and microphone system. And it's almost like there was some outside force that was trying to stop us from doing the interview. So we've postponed for a little while, and once she's sorted and back on her feet, technology-wise, she's going to let me know, and we'll get that interview recorded for you guys, because it does promise to be a good one. The topic that she talks about, near-death experiences, it's something I am absolutely fascinated with, to be honest. If ever there's a documentary on or anything, I'll always sit down and watch it, or if I've come across a few books in the past that I've read and enjoyed on the topic, and it is closely linked to what I do in terms of paranormal investigating, because these people are probably, that have experienced and had near-death experiences, they're probably the closest we'll ever get to understanding what's on the other side, shall we say. So today, what I decided to do was just give you an episode based around a case study that I've been doing, and it's become a very big part of my recent presentation that I've been doing around England. And it's based around a house in Essex, and there's a family that live there. And they've had a lot of goings on, and not very nice goings on actually. They've had a lot of pennies thrown, seems to be the main thing. Pennies are always thrown. There's evidence where they've damaged the plaster on the wall, where they've hit the wall with such force. They've had scratches, they've had strangulation, they've had voices being thrown, voices like mocking. So if there's a family member not in the house, they will hear that family member talking, almost like it's mimicking the person that's not there. We've been down and caught a dog barking, despite there not being a dog in the house at the time and not being one in the local vicinity anyway. So today I'm going to kind of talk you through the case, give you my thoughts and feelings, and also we're going to have Kelly on. So Kelly is the lady that lives in the house with her partner Lee and their family. And she's going to come on and just give us a bit of background as to how it all started and the effects that it's had on the family. So before we get into that, I'd just like to talk to you about a new theory that seems to have surfaced recently. And credit here to Melissa Martell, who you guys might remember from a couple of episodes back. She's the host of Secret Door podcast. Great podcast it is. And she shared on social media a new theory. And this theory is titled the Box Universe Theory. And this describes now as an arbitrary place in time and states that the past, the future, and the present all exist simultaneously. Massachusetts Institute of Technology Professor of Philosophy, Dr. Bradford Scow, I think it's Scow, Skow, suggests that if we look down on the universe as if we were looking at a piece of paper, we would see time spanning all directions, exactly the same way that we see space at some point. So what does this really mean, asks the article. Well, this suggests that time as we know it is incorrect. In other words, it is not linear as we have always thought. In fact, everything around us is always present. So this is a really interesting article and a really interesting theory, and it's one that's very close to my heart, and I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about my theories before, and it's very similar to this, and about how time isn't linear, and everything that's ever happened, ever will happen in the future, if we can call it the future, is all happening right now. And if that's the case, where does that leave us on spirits and ghosts and what they actually are, or what they could be? Who's to say that, when we are witnessing a spirit or we're witnessing paranormal activity, who's to say that it is the deceased spirit of a once living human being? And when I first started getting into paranormal investigating, that's what really pushed me, because I used to think at the time, well, there has to be more to what we're dealing with here than the fact that it's just a dead person that's moved on. Because why do some move on and some don't? Why do some choose to move on and some choose to hang around? It was all very vague for me. So I've spent my time investigating, trying to really pinpoint what it is that we're dealing with. What kind of energy is it? What kind of an entity is it? Is it a consciousness? Is it a residual energy? Is there alternate frequencies, alternate dimensions where these things are existing? And this theory kind of helps back that up, in as much as when we're seeing a spirit, who's to say that what's happening is we're just not crossing timelines and we're witnessing someone who was once, who is living in their timeline, and for the briefest of moments, the frequencies that these timelines exist on have crossed paths, and we witness each other. So people may sit in their living room and watch an old man walk through the wall and through their house, and in that old man's timeline, that wall isn't there. So he's not walking through a wall, he's just walking through a doorway, maybe. And who's to say that this old man doesn't look at the people that are sat in the house watching him and think, ooh, I think I've just seen a ghost. Just the same as the people watching him are thinking, oh, I've just seen a ghost. And if that's the case, then it brings a whole new meaning to what spirits are. And when we're communicating with things on a spirit board, maybe we're communicating with another frequency or another timeline where those people think they're communicating with a spirit on a board. We can talk about this all day, I suppose, and it does get a bit confusing and it needs nailing down a little bit more. It does seem a bit vague, I understand that. But the more these theories are looked at, the more we can begin to understand how this can play a part into paranormal investigating. And this is one thing that infuriates me when we go to locations or to houses or wherever we go and investigate. When people always ask the same generic questions, are you a male? Are you a female? And the classic, do you mean us harm? From the people that have watched too many Most Haunted episodes or too many Hollywood films. I'm more interested in asking questions such as, what's the world like where you are? And have you met God? And being a complete and utter atheist myself, that's always an interesting question to ask. And believe it or not, I've actually been reprimanded for that. I've been told off for saying you can't say that. And I think, well, why not? As interesting as it is, and it does help with research into the area and what it is you're dealing with. I don't really care if we're talking to a male or a female, or if he means us harm, or any of the other generic questions. If we're really sincerely communicating with a spirit or an entity that's existing on a different plane, on a different frequency, in another dimension, then why aren't we using these opportunities to ask questions such as, have you met God? What's it like where you are? Can you come and go into the alternate frequencies? These kind of questions. And they're the ones that are going to help further the investigative field. And that's why I believe the whole field itself has become rather stale. People are still using the same pieces of equipment that we've been using for decades now, just because they see the people on TV using them as well. And most of the time, these people that are using these pieces of equipment, they don't know what they do, really. They don't have a full understanding of what they are. They just see their favourite TV presenters using them, or they see that everybody else is using them, or a website's told them, oh, this is good for catching ghosts. And off they go with these pieces of equipment, not really with a full understanding of what it is they're actually doing with it. So Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting theory. The article does go on to talk a little bit more, particularly about how Einstein introduced a theory of unified space and time. But Dr. Scow added, the block universe theory says that you're spread out in time, something like the way you're spread out in space. We're not located at a single time. So does that mean that maybe if I'm understanding this right, and I had this discussion with someone the other day, does that mean that what we're doing now, I'm recording this for you guys to listen to, did I record it yesterday as well? And will I be recording it tomorrow and the day after? And so on, almost like a Groundhog Day. But this particular instance of me, so this version of me that is here right now, will continue to live his life. And if that's the case, then do we ever die, or do we just continually go around in a loop, kind of living our life over and over again? Again, a very, very interesting thought. Dr. Scow agrees that while things change and we see time as if it was passing, he believes that we are in a scattered condition and that different parts of time may be dotted around the infinite universe. So, what do you guys think about this? I've put this article on our Facebook page, so if you're a member on the group, fantastic. Go and have a look, click on it. You can read it yourself, give me your thoughts. If you're not a member on the Facebook group, just head over to Facebook. It's facebook.com/the paranormal paradigm. We have a page and a group. If you just click to kind of join the group, I can accept you in, and we can have some interesting discussions in there. And this article is in there in particular. Just take a look, take a read, and let me know what you think about this article. So, onto the house that I said we were going to discuss, the house in Essex. So around about December time, maybe late November of last year, I was giving a talk in Swansea for Swansea UFO group. I think it's SUFON, Swansea UFO Network. A great group, to be honest. It was a fantastic turnout. It was quite far for me to travel, but it's all worthwhile, when you have a really appreciative audience that interacts with you and listens to what you have to say. And I met a lady there called Daniela, and she came up to me. She spoke to me about how she was a medium, threw some interesting stories at me about things she'd experienced and that. It was a really interesting conversation, and that was that. She kind of went her way. I travelled home. About 2 or 3 weeks later or so, she messaged me on Facebook to say that she'd got a family who'd contacted her because they needed help, and she thought it would be a good idea to get myself involved, being an investigator, to try and help the family understand what's going on. So we had a couple of weeks of talking on Facebook Messenger, as you do, between myself, Dan, and Kelly. And during that time, Kelly was sending me some interesting videos of what was going on, and she even went to the stage of installing CCTV in her house because she wanted to capture what was going on. And people that often say to me, oh, could they be faking it? I think, well, would they go to the expense of installing, what rather expensive cameras in their house to try and capture evidence if they were just after a quick 15 minutes of fame? So after a couple of weeks of chatting and exchanging messages and ideas of what this thing could be, myself and Ryan, who's been on the show before, we decided to head down to the house and spend. I think we were there for we got there about 2, 3ish, and we stayed until about 9, 10. So we were there for a good few hours. And what's interesting about this case is, it happens at all times of the day. It can happen in the depths of night. It can happen at 11 o'clock in the morning. There's activity constantly throughout the day at any time. And we travelled down, and we we took some equipment, just some basic equipment really. So some cameras, some motion sensor cameras, EVP recorders. We did take an EMF meter, a spirit board, and some trigger objects as well. And when we got there, the first thing I said to Kelly, really, and I'm sure I'd already mentioned this to her before, was, I can't get rid of this thing. If that's what you're after, and of course that's what she ultimately is after, she wants this thing gone. I pointed out to her that, I have no authority there, and I can't get rid of whatever this is. What I can do as an investigator is I can help you understand what it is you've got, what this thing wants, why it's there, why it's pestering you so much. And once we understand what it is and what it wants, and maybe how we can get rid of it, then we know how to act, and we know who to contact, and we know the severity of the case. Is it demonic? Is it just a trickster? Is it a family member maybe just having a laugh, playing some games? We don't really know this until we investigate it. And I was really, really, I guess, annoyed because she told me that she'd had a couple of previous people go in, medium type people, who claimed to be able to cleanse the house. So they went down, they walked around the house, kind of throwing some sage around, throwing some oil up the walls, which stained their painted walls. We could see the stains when we went down, and claimed to have rid the house of the entity. Within about 2 hours of them leaving the house, it started up again. So they clearly hadn't done what they'd said they'd done. And I kind of questioned this because I thought, well, how can a family, how can an investigator, and I use that term loosely in this case, go in and claim to have rid the house of the entity when they don't understand what the entity is? They've done no previous kind of looking into the house, into the surrounding areas, into the background of the building or the land that the house was built on. They'd done no work in terms of trying to understand what this thing was, no research in that respect. I think they'd spent about 45 minutes or an hour recording on an EVP, asking some questions, didn't really get much, and then decided that they were going to, throw some sage around, chuck some oil up the walls, and tell the family that it had gone. And I found this really disappointing. But this thing happens a lot. This isn't a singled out occurrence. This thing happens all the time. And it was only yesterday, again, I saw on social media there was someone calling out for help. They'd asked for a paranormal investigator to go to their friend's house because they believed they were dealing with a demonic entity. And I've contacted these people. I'm waiting on a response if I get one, because they are quite local to me. And what I found interesting again was someone made the comment, "Oh, you don't need a paranormal investigator for this. They're not going to help you get rid of it." That's very, very true. They're not going to help them get rid of it unless the investigator goes along with a medium or someone that is experienced in ridding properties of these kind of entities. A plain investigator isn't going to help this family. However, they do need an investigator because they need someone to go and help them understand what this is. Because most families, when they're dealing with this, they don't understand. And particularly Kelly in Essex, she's got young children in the house, and they're petrified of this thing. They just want this thing gone. They just want their lives to return to normality, and they want kind of to get rid of it and just have their lives back to normal, really. And so what they need is they need someone to go in and help them and almost hold the hand a little bit and tell them that everything's going to be okay, of course, and try and understand what it is that they have in this house, because only by understanding what it is that is haunting this house and plaguing the family, only by understanding what it is will we succeed in getting rid of it. We can't get rid of something or attempt to get rid of something if we don't know what it is we're getting rid of. And I stand by that. But again, it's happening all across, particularly across the country. I've seen it in America on certain social media posts. And then, this post that I'm talking about in particular that was posted yesterday, that followed dozens and dozens of comments from people, and they're all contradicting each other. One person saying, "Oh, you need to burn some sage." The other person saying, "Oh, you don't burn sage, you do this." And, "Oh, no, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing that." And, the family's going to be looking at that thinking, wow, what am I actually supposed to do? Is there anything I can do here? And that's the problem with the investigative field, is that it's very, very splintered. It's very kind of sectioned, really. And some people tell you that you deal with it one particular way, and some people tell you deal with it another particular way. And they each think that that's the only way you can deal with it. Now, I actually think that both are probably correct, and it's a case-by-case basis, exactly as it is with human beings. If you get 10 people and they're all suffering from the same illness, most of the time different things will help a different person depending on what they can take and what helps their body in particular. So just to use a very very lame example, I suppose, there are certain cough medicines that I take and they do absolutely nothing for me if I've got a bad cough. There's other medicine that I take and it works an absolute dream, and within a couple of days my cough's gone, my mucus is gone, and I feel right as rain. My wife, on the other hand, she takes other brands of cough medicine, and they work absolutely fine for her. So it's each to their own. And I think slightly off topic there, but I think that that's what it's like with hauntings and trying to rid properties and areas of these kind of entities. That there isn't one generic way. It isn't kind of one size fits all, one exercise across the whole board. I think you need to analyze the situation at hand on a case by case basis and see what you really are dealing with, and only then can you make the decision. And it might be different to what you did last time. There's no problem with that. And that's the problem with this field, is that everybody thinks that they're right. Everybody thinks that they have the answers. Everybody thinks that they know everything that's going on within the paranormal world. And that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case. And I often start my presentations with, if you've come here for answers, then you might as well leave, because I don't have any. If anything, I'm only going to throw more questions at you. And I think anyone that kind of claims to know exactly what's going on when it comes to the paranormal is just talking rubbish, really. They probably have a very high image of themselves, and they probably think that they're God's gift. And it's just not the case. And we need to kind of eliminate this mindset, really, because it's not good for the field. It's not good for the future of investigation. What it does do is it holds people back. And the thing is, if you're going to every single investigation with exactly the same mindset, doing exactly the same thing, not only is your evidence going to suffer, because again, there are some places we've been to and we've done exactly what we did on a previous location, but it's just not working. As soon as we've spiced it up a bit and tried something different, we get results. And that's, again, what I'm trying to say, that it's a case-by-case basis. But not only is your evidence going to suffer, but also your own development as an investigator and a researcher, that's going to, it's going to stall. You're not going to really grow. You're not going to go anywhere. It's only by, changing your thought processes, mixing things up, trying different ways of experimenting, different theories. That's the only way that you're going to grow as an individual, as a team, if you tend to investigate as a team. But it's also how the evidence is going to grow and the field is going to grow, and theories are going to come out of this. And hopefully, again, slowly, drip by drip, we will begin to have a much, much better understanding of what paranormal investigating is. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to call Kelly. So this is slightly pre-recorded, so there might be a difference in tone or a difference in sound levels or something. But we're going to get her on the phone and through Skype, and she's going to tell us a bit more about the story and the effect that it's had on the family. And that's the most important thing here. It would be very easy for me as an investigator, and I'm sure other investigators would agree, it would be very easy to get really excited about this, all the evidence that we can collate, all of the different things we could look at. We could spend days there experiencing all of these things. But ultimately, it's having an extremely negative effect on the family. And that's all that matters. And we need to kind of think about sacrificing our own personal gain in terms of evidence and experience, just to make sure that this family can, get their lives back to normal, get their lives back on track, and stop sleeping in the living room, which they're doing most nights, because they're just too scared to go upstairs. So, right, so let's get Kelly on the phone, and she can tell us a little bit more about the case from her own personal perspective. And we have Kelly on the line. Kelly, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Kieran, yourself?
Yeah, I'm very, very good, thank you. Listen, thanks for coming on at such short notice. Really appreciate that. Now, I've kind of introduced you and given a bit of a background as to, how we met and how I got involved. But I haven't really gone into how this whole thing started and how your house came to be the living hell that it is now. So would you like to go into some details and tell us how it all started?
Yeah, not a problem. Right, okay, so I moved into my house the end of December 2014. Was there for a couple of years. Nothing obviously happened, didn't notice anything. My eldest daughter, who's now 20, one of her friends passed away in April 2017. In May 2017, my daughter come home one night with a few friends, obviously a little bit upset. They decided that they were going to light candles in my living room and call out to her to see if they could contact her. That night, at 3:15 in the morning, all my electrics tripped, my smoke alarm went off. Obviously, they had to wake my partner to get everything sorted out. At this point, we wasn't aware of anything that had happened. 2 weeks to that day, I was at work. I was on the phone to my partner, talking away. All of a sudden, I've heard this big hissing noise, and I was like, "Oh, that was really strange." And then there was three big bangs at the front door. My partner, it actually sounded like police were going to come through. It was that loud. My partner said he was going to go and check it out and ring me back. Obviously, he didn't phone me back. I rang him, and when I asked him who was at the door, all I kept getting off him was I didn't want to talk about it. About 15, 20 minutes later, my partner rang me, begged me to come home, which obviously I did. I could tell in his voice that something really wasn't right. By the time I got home, he came running outside the front of the house saying, "Kelly, there's something wrong with the house." He'd been hiding in my twins' room. My twins were at home, but they were asleep. He could hear footsteps, things being thrown, and at that point, he actually filmed a shadow moving across the wall at the bottom of my landing, and then my bathroom door closing. This,
Okay.
yeah, this was
um,
actually the beginning of everything that started happening. So,
right, I remember that was the first video that I got sent.
yes, yeah,
Was that shadow? And for the listeners, I'll with Kelly's permission, I'll put this video on our page, and you guys can have a
yep,
look and see what you think.
yep, that's fine.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you had these three loud bangs, and again,
Yep,
for the listeners, there was nothing there. So when Lee opened the door,
yep, there was
kind
nothing.
of no one there. And we believe now that what you'd done is you'd let this entity in.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. From that night on, obviously more things started happening. It wasn't so often at first. It was kind of every week, maybe every 2 weeks, always in the evening. And then it sort of progressed to sort of every couple of days, then all different times. And now, more or less, it's literally all day, every day.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I mentioned in the intro was that this thing can happen at 11 in the morning. It can happen at
Yep,
11 at night. There's no real pattern to it. And again, as an investigator, the first thing I did was try and ascertain, was there a pattern? Was this thing
yep,
happening at the same time every day or the same time every night? And I was absolutely flummoxed because I just couldn't. It never happened the same time. It never happened the
no,
same way.
no,
And that really makes it quite difficult to get a grip or an understanding on what it actually is. So
yeah,
your daughter made this seance kind of thing
yeah,
to try and get in touch with her friend.
yep.
Now, do you think that her friend is actually there? Do you
No,
think they've summoned something else?
I personally think it's something else, and personally don't think it's just one. I believe there is more than one in that house. I've seen sometimes, most of the times, there's one that sort of just likes to play games. We get a lot of things that get thrown about in front of us, knockings, things like that. But then there's something that comes every now and then that isn't so nice. Um, I've witnessed so much stuff in that house that you just cannot rationally explain.
Okay. Well, shall we go into that? So let's
Yep,
kind of the main thing was and is pennies.
yes,
So when we came down, we were in the house for
yep.
what? Well, we were in the house just long
Not
enough for
long.
Lee to make us a coffee.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
And we'd had two pennies thrown at us on two
Yep,
different occasions
yeah,
from upstairs, and I can categorically say that there was no one upstairs at the time.
yeah.
Yeah, so pennies is a big thing. So do you want to tell us about some of the pennies that you've had? And
Yeah, I mean, the pennies started back in roughly October time. We just get random pennies thrown at us across hallways. I've got so many dents in the walls from them. And then it just started becoming more regular. I've got a jar downstairs. When the pennies started, I actually went through the whole of my house and removed every coin in the house, including my twins' piggy bank. So I knew there was no change. I've currently got a jar downstairs which has probably got well over 200 coins in it now. It started with pennies. I've had 2p's. I've actually asked it for £50 notes before, and I got 5p's thrown at me. So, and
And
they
you
do
had
hurt when they get you.
you had a New Zealand 10 pence as well?
I've had a New Zealand 10 cents thrown at me. I've had euros thrown at us. Yeah, it's not just English coins. It's all different types of coins.
Okay, and one of the latest photos that you sent me is it shows the indentations in the plaster. You've just had your house decorated again.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
indentations in the walls where these pennies are being thrown
yep, yep,
and leaving some very, very deep marks in the
yeah,
plaster. And
yeah,
what I found interesting was if you were to throw a penny at a wall, 9
yeah,
times out of 10, it would hit the wall on the edge of the penny.
yeah,
So the mark you would see would, kind of just be a small line maybe where the
yeah,
edge hit. But what you're getting is actually a full impression almost
yep,
of penny. So it's
yep,
hitting the wall kind of face on
yep.
and strong enough to leave a mark, which I find I can't explain that. I would never be able to throw a penny at a wall, have it hit face on, and leave the marks that this is leaving.
Yeah, I've actually got pure circles in my walls from 1p's and 2p's actually imprinted in the walls, and they're quite deep. So obviously the force that these coins are getting thrown, it's got to be quite forceful.
And have you ever had a penny hit you or
I
hit a family member?
I have, yes, myself and my partner. Just before I put my cameras up, because obviously all this led to me putting the CCTV up.
Yeah.
I made a video of me standing in my hallway, and a penny actually comes over my partner, and that actually hit me. And they do hurt because they are thrown with some force.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can hear. I mean, I've got videos where you don't always see the penny, but you certainly
No,
hear them hit the wall and then
yeah,
roll away on your laminate flooring.
yeah,
Um, okay, so there's the pennies that are being thrown, but
yeah,
we've also had, I guess, audio phenomena. So we've had growls. We've
yeah,
had. There's a fascinating video where it sounds like there's a voice saying "going to get you" right before Lee gets hit.
yes, yeah.
I believe with a penny or something.
No,
Uh,
it was a toy that got thrown at
A
him.
toy, right?
Yeah,
Okay. And yeah, and you clear as day, you can hear this voice say "going to get you."
yeah.
So we have audio phenomena, and do you tend to hear that with your own ears, as well as on the camera?
We do. We get full sentences. I've had people in the house actually call people's names that ain't actually in. There was one time that my 16-year-old daughter, her boyfriend, and my 7-year-old twins were by my front door waiting to go out. My partner had left with one of my dogs and had been gone for about 5 minutes, and we all heard a whole sentence of my partner from my landing saying, "Come on, Coco, let's go low." And
Lol,
it
ending
was
in
yeah,
lol.
and he doesn't even say low. I've never known him to say that. It was a full sentence. It was his voice, but it just sounded a little bit deeper and a little bit more robotic. So
Okay.
obviously we all looked at each other, and it wasn't just we all heard it at once.
What I find interesting about that is, there are so many cases where these entities can mimic a voice,
Yeah,
and it's almost like this entity's trying too hard.
yeah,
It may have heard one of the kids kind of saying "lol,"
yeah,
and it thinks that it's part of a language, a normal
yeah,
language,
yeah,
and so it's thrown it in there, but it's completely out of place. And I guess it's looking for little details like that where you can tell that what obviously your partner wasn't in the house, but should
yeah,
he be?
yeah,
And it tries to throw his voice, then
yeah.
it's little details like that give it away.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, my partner does not say "lol" at all. That's more of a teenage thing. So we was
Absolutely.
all quite surprised at that, to be honest.
And now in the last, I guess really in the last month, maybe to 2 months, it's got
Yeah.
a lot more physical,
Yes.
in terms of physical to you, to the body.
Yes.
You've had scratches.
Yeah. Quite a few people. My partner's been scratched. My 16-year-old daughter, her boyfriend's been scratched. I've woken up with a few scratches on me that I can't explain. But everyone else has actually been scratched while standing in the house and fully awake. My partner got scratched right across his back about a month and a half ago while standing in front of me.
I remember when we were there.
Yeah.
Is it Elise? She had
Yeah.
a big red mark on her
Mark.
shoulder as if she'd
Yeah.
been hit.
Yeah.
And we put our thermometer on it, and it was about 5 or 6 degrees warmer than the other arm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a
I've just seen
bright
it.
red mark. And she said it started to sting after a while.
Yes.
She hadn't done any. I mean, she'd been with us the whole night, and I can't. understand what it could have been.
No.
So that was interesting. And you've had strangulation, haven't you? You've had one of your daughters was strangled in bed.
Yeah, no, I've been pinned to the bed when this very first started. I got pinned to the bed upstairs to the point where I could not move at all.
Yeah.
My 16-year-old, about a month and a half ago, me and my family was in the living room sitting there just having normal conversation. Leah said that she didn't feel right, and she was grabbed around the throat. She just literally in front of us just turned pure white. She did have a red mark around her neck. I literally had to get her out the house.
Right.
She wouldn't come back after that. She literally stayed at a friend's house. She did not want to come back in the house.
Oh, okay. And then I did mention in the intro about how your two twins, you know, that you basically camp out in the living room most nights because you're scared.
For the last 4 or 5 weeks, my twins won't stay in their beds no more. Obviously, my twins are 7-year-old. My little boy's autistic. They've actually heard voices. Alfie's heard that something's going to get him. They've heard whispers. They've had things thrown across their bedroom. So it got to the point where they wouldn't sleep in their room no more. And there was one incident a couple of months ago which actually caused me, my partner, and my twins to start sleeping in my living room. And we've not slept upstairs since.
Would you like to go into that incident?
What it was, I was in my bed in my bedroom with my twins because they wasn't sleeping in their bed. My daughter and her boyfriend were in their bedroom, the other side of the house. Lee was out picking up a washing machine for my eldest daughter because she'd just moved out. All of a sudden, we heard this massive banging. It must have been quite loud, really loud. I shouted out to my 16-year-old, Leah, is that you? Her and her boyfriend were like, no, Mum, it's not us. All of a sudden, the whole house started shaking. I've got a super queen size velvet crush bed, and they're not light. My daughter's bedroom is the other side of the house. My bed was shaking, her bed was shaking, the walls were shaking. So obviously that was a really, really scary time. And since then we haven't slept upstairs.
And that's become more and more frequent, the wall shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've also the cameras that you've got in your the batteries in your cameras, they should be lasting years, and I believe you're changing them weekly.
No, they should be lasting 2 years, and we're actually changing them every other day now.
Wow.
They just drain so quick. It's meant to be 2 years, but every other day, obviously, it's costing us a fortune in batteries.
Yeah.
But I keep them on because obviously I like to know what's going on in the house.
And your electricity bill, I know you said that was through the roof on a weekly basis.
Yeah, my electricity bill at the moment is costing me £60 a week just for my electric.
Wow. So whatever this thing is, it's really, really draining the energy in order to function, in order to operate.
Yeah. I mean, all my electrical equipment in the house goes haywire. My TVs turn on and off. When they come back on, they turn up at full volume. You'll be sitting there, power will completely just go to the Virgin box. 5 minutes later, it will just come back on. You'll start watching TV again, and then the same thing will happen to a TV. It's not just the main TV in the living room, it's also my daughter's TV in her bedroom. The electrics in the house just go haywire. I've got lights that flicker, they literally turn on and off by themselves. There was an incident about 3 weeks ago when me and my partner had gone out. My daughter, her boyfriend, and 2 of her friends were there, and the whole of my upstairs lights just went out. The
Every single one.
had a trip. The whole. There was no power upstairs whatsoever. And obviously, me and my partner had to come back so we could try and sort it out.
And I have to point out here, because it was one of the first questions I asked you.
Yeah.
You have had the council out on 3 occasions?
Yeah, 3 occasions now. And I actually had my 5-year annual electricity inspection 2 weeks ago. And there is nothing wrong with my electrics whatsoever.
Wow. Because I know for a fact there'll be listeners out there saying, oh, you know, there's just faulty electrics in the house, but you've certainly covered that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you've reported, and another one I find interesting, is liquids. So you're having the feeling of water dripping on you, or you've had this kind of, the only way I can describe it is like a rust stained liquid coming through your walls, or
it's not through my walls, it's my landing upstairs, but from downstairs. Obviously I've got plastic edging that goes along the landing from sort of downstairs, and then I've got the wooden banister. And this started probably about 3.5 months ago. People would walk out, and all of a sudden you'd get a drip of liquid land on your head, and it always lands in the same place on people, right in the middle of their forehead. You can see the liquid, you can touch it, you can feel it's there, and we just couldn't work out where it was coming from. There's no leaks or anything. But then we noticed on the actual edging of the plastic and on the wood of my banisters, there is, like you said, rustic marks, just where you can see where single drips have come from. And it's getting more and more. I think to start with, I had about 10 of these marks. I've probably got about 30 of them now,
Wow.
just from single drips of liquid.
And one thing we've spoke of is we're going to try and get that liquid kind of tested. We're gonna we're trying to try and scrape a bit off. The difficulty is finding somewhere that can test it, and not charge through the nose for it.
Yeah.
Because it'd be really interesting to see what chemical makeup this liquid has.
Yeah.
And where it's coming from. So when it was dripping on them, was it always in the same place, or were people in different areas?
No, always in the same place. It's always underneath my hallway downstairs.
And that seems to be the hotbed, doesn't it? The stairs.
Yeah.
That's where that's where the pennies get thrown. One of the things that really sticks out for me was when we were at your house, we were doing a spirit board in the living room.
Yeah.
And you gone and sat in the car because you didn't want to take part.
No, definitely not.
No, and there was no one upstairs, and clear as day we heard 3 footsteps and then the door creak open.
Yeah.
And what's interesting was we had an EVP recorder next to us, we had one on the staircase right by the door, we had the camera filming the door, we had a motion sensor camera, we had a video camera, and not one piece of these equipment caught any of that audio.
No, which obviously is quite strange. Obviously, it wasn't just yourselves that heard it, was it? My partner and my eldest daughter.
Every single person in the house heard it. Yeah. We all collaborated what we'd heard. We all looked at each other, and I'm not the smallest of guys, but I moved so fast. I was straight up the stairs to see what the hell that was, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing there. So what's your plans? Obviously, I'm working with you, but it's difficult because I live like 150 miles away or whatever.
Yeah.
I've mentioned Daniela, so the medium that's also kind of working with us.
She's brilliant.
I mean she's done great, but again she lives in Swansea, so she's even further away.
Yeah.
What is your plan now? I know you've contacted a priest.
I did. I had a priest round a couple of weeks ago. Obviously asked him to come out and bless the house. I'm not religious at all. But obviously, I've had a lot of people round in the past who said they can get rid of it, they can clear things. I've had the house cleaned, which only led to things getting a lot worse. I've had people come round who said they know what they're doing. They've gone, they've told me they've got rid of it, and as soon as they've left, something's happened. So I actually did go to the church a couple of weeks ago. He came round and visited me, and obviously I asked him to come and bless the house. But he's told me I've got to go to church and he'll do it. Obviously, I'm not a very religious person. I've also got 5 kids, and 4 of them are special needs. So obviously, it is quite awkward for me to do anything like that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I'm not religious, but I see that as it's quite a selfish motive, really. They just see it as another way of recruiting,
exactly.
more members into their church. When really, if they practice what they preached, and that's kind of care for everybody and consideration for everybody, then it's completely irrelevant whether you went to church or not. They should be trying to help you out of your misery.
Exactly.
I found that very hypocritical, really. But then again, in my opinion, that's what a lot of what the church is.
I felt like I was being blackmailed, really, because basically, if I don't go to a church every Sunday, I won't get my house blessed.
Yeah,
obviously, I didn't like very much, to be honest.
No, that's not good at all. So, what's your next step? I mean, what is it you can do now? I mean, you've contacted several people. I'm trying to help you as much as I can, trying to get an understanding of what it is. But realistically, where do we go from here? What do you think?
At the moment, Kieran, to be honest, I haven't got a clue. Obviously, I'm seeing how things go. At the moment, things seem to happen in waves. I have a lot of activity that will last probably a week, where it just don't stop. And then I get a couple of days of rest, where to me it seems like whatever's in my house is gathering energy. And then all of a sudden it will just start again. At the moment, I'm kind of at the thing where we're sleeping in the living room. I don't really know where to go or what to do next. At the moment, we're just trying to deal living with everything that's going on, and it's not nice. I mean, I've run out of my house myself. I'm not a very emotional person, But when the walls started shaking and the loud knockings, I mean, I get knockings in threes from behind TVs and all sorts. When that happens, I've actually run out my house in tears. And
Yeah.
when it's bad, I will not go in my house. When the children are at school and my partner's at work, I'll sit in the car, because if I go in that house, I get terrorised.
Yeah, and
So
of course it's a council house that you're in,
it is, yeah,
and unfortunately you can't. That's not a reason to the council. You can't say to the
no,
council, "Can we move because my house is haunted?" That's
exactly,
not an excuse they buy.
exactly.
So it's not
And
that easy for you to just move.
no, the only other option I would have was to do a transfer. But if I did that, I'd be putting another family in the house that'd have children, and
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep at night knowing that another family would be going through what we've been going through.
But of course, the other thing is, and we're not entirely sure, is
Yeah.
that if you were to move, who's to say that it wouldn't follow?
Exactly, and that's
We
another
don't know
that's
that.
nothing. No, we don't. That's the thing. I mean, obviously, my life has changed a hell of a lot since this has all happened. I mean, I got made redundant in August, and I haven't been able to go back to work because near enough every time I leave the house, I get phone calls from my 16-year-old mum, come back, something's happening, I'm scared. So at the moment, I can't even go back to work because I can't leave anyone in the house on their own. Obviously, it's got to the point where nobody showers in that house on their own. Everyone showers in twos now. It has got absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I know when we were there, your daughter got changed in the downstairs toilet because she didn't want to go upstairs on her own.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's now moved out, has she? She's moved.
My eldest daughter, yeah, she moved out just before Christmas. But 4 months prior to obviously her moving out, she wouldn't stay at the house no more because she was too scared. She was actually sofa surfing through all her friends. And the one night that she couldn't actually find anywhere to stay, she had to stay at home. And she actually ended up sleeping in my bed with me because she kept getting whispering voices and things thrown across her bedroom.
No, one thing I found interesting about this case
Yeah.
is any kind of poltergeist activity
Mhm.
that's happened in other places. It always seems to focus on an adolescent
Yeah.
person in the house.
Yeah.
In this instance, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, Lee, your partner, seems to bear the brunt of this. He's the one that, he's in every single video where there's activity.
Yeah.
Pretty much. He's the one that gets the pennies thrown at him. He's been punched,
Yeah.
he's been scratched, as have other people. But it does tend to really focus on Lee, and I think, and I know that you think the same, that it almost sees him as this threat.
Yeah.
If this entity is to really rule the house, he
Yeah.
has to get rid of the next alpha male, and that is
Yeah.
obviously Lee.
Yeah.
So he sees him as a threat, and I guess it thinks that once Lee's out of the way, he's got free reign of the house.
Exactly. I mean, the reason why we put the CCTV up is because there was one. This was November. I always put my Christmas decorations up early, and I'd ask Lee the day after bonfire night to get in my loft and get my decorations out. I was standing in the living room. I had both my daughters at the back room adjacent to the stairs with both their boyfriends. Lee had got to the bottom step. There was nobody else upstairs, and a suitcase actually came over the banister and hit him straight on the head.
Wow.
And obviously after that, we was like, no, I'm going to put CCTV up because something's really not right in this house.
Yeah.
So that was the main cause of it. But Lee does get the brunt. I mean, I've seen broken mirror fly at Lee. I've sent you a video, Kieran, haven't I, of where Lee's sitting on the stairs and he's just sitting there because obviously we was having a lot of activity that day, and something actually hit him straight in the face, and you can see his head getting hit, and it hits the banister, and as he gets hit, his leg actually comes up to balance himself from obviously the force of what hit him.
Yeah, that's a fantastic video. I show this at my presentation because and the first thing I point out is it would be very easy to fake that. It would be very, very easy to rock your head to one side and say you've just been hit. But what I find interesting is, one, you can hear it. There's the sound of the contact, and also, as you've just mentioned there, his leg shoots out as if to balance himself. And I think if you were faking it, I don't think you'd go into that much detail. You'd just rock your head to the side and pretend you've been hit. His whole body language is that of someone that has actually just been hit. And so again, it's very interesting, and it's very easy to call fake. But having been there myself, I know you guys rather well now. And to study that video 100%, I don't believe that is fake.
No, I mean, I've put that video on a stereo and turned it up. Obviously, in a lot of the videos I've got, there is a lot of EVPs. In that video, just before Lee actually gets hit, if you put it on a stereo out quite loud, you can hear something say, "Hey," and then Lee's literally hit. So it's like it's saying, "Hey, I'm here. Have
Yeah,
you had that?" Yeah, I mean, since that day, Lee was always quite brazen about it. If things were happening, he'd walk around the house. Since that day, it has scared the life out of him, Kieran.
yeah,
I mean, my partner's a big bloke, as you know, 20 stone. When things happen now, especially when the walls start shaking, he looks at me and he says, "I'm going out." So not more than not now. Every time it starts kicking off in my house, he'll take the dog for a walk. And
yeah.
I know it's because he's fearful because of that day where he got hit.
Of course. I mean, once it turns physical,
Yeah,
it a whole new I guess a whole new atmosphere descends on the
yeah,
situation,
yeah,
because you know that this thing can actually affect your life
yeah,
on a physical level now. So yeah,
yeah.
I massively understand his apprehension.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Kelly, I've really appreciate you coming on.
That's okay.
Hopefully, we've got some listeners out there who might have an idea about what we can do. Maybe they can
Yeah,
help. If there is anyone out there, please get in touch.
that would be brilliant.
Yeah. If you come to me, and then I can direct you to Kelly,
Yep,
and maybe we can get a better understanding of what this is. Maybe you guys
yep,
have experienced this yourself,
yep.
and we can get to the bottom of this, because it's hell, isn't it, Kelly? To be
It,
honest with you.
it is, and it's been going on for so long, and it's not just affecting me; it's affecting the children as well. And
Yeah,
like I said, I just want my house back, and I want my life back.
yeah,
To be
yeah.
honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on.
No worries, Kieran.
Enjoy
Nice
the
to
rest of
speak
your
to you.
weekend, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.
No worries. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that was the interview there with Kelly, the lady who unfortunately is suffering this haunting at the moment at her house in Essex. Um, Apologies if she was a little bit quiet there. She kind of had to left the house and was talking on her phone in the car, so the kids weren't noisy in the background. But I'm sure if you just crank the volume, you'll hear what she's got to say, and hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what I was trying to explain during the intro. You know, this is a horrible thing for this family to be going through, and of course, it's not just this family; it's happening, worldwide, I guess. And in fact, I only did a presentation at East Anglia UFO Group last week, and they had a lady there who approached me with some video evidence, and I plan on going down there at the end of March to investigate that. Nothing, nowhere near what's been going on at Kelly's house, but we have had sightings of a man standing at the bottom of a child's bed. Very interesting video of an orb anomaly flashing above a pram merely milliseconds before the pram then gets pushed over. We've also had a great video of a shadow running through the door, the open door, into the bedroom, like a black mass. Very interesting stuff. And I'm just a bit cautious, really, that this may turn into the same situation, the same scenario that Kelly's got going on, and that's the last thing I want for another family to start suffering this. So, guys, if there's anyone that's listened to this, whether it be yourself or whether you know of somebody that can help, please get in touch. Through the usual channels, get in touch through Facebook, Paranormal Paradigm Podcast at gmail.com. Find me personally on Facebook, Kieran Woodhouse. Please let me know of anyone that might be able to help here. Any suggestions are welcome. We've tried so much stuff now. We're willing to try anything, really, just to help Kelly get her life back, as you mentioned there. And hopefully you could see, or well, hear the distress in her voice. You know, it's affecting her family. They're sleeping downstairs in the living room now. They don't want to go upstairs. You know, and to have the whole house shake, walls are shaking, the floors are shaking. You know, this whatever this is it's a strong entity. Um, and you guys know my theory by now. We touched on it at the start of the show. It doesn't necessarily mean that this thing is the spirit or the consciousness of a once living human being. This could just be energy. It could just be consciousness that's never existed within this frequency range. It could be something that we don't know. It might not be human. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's demonic. It doesn't mean it's come through the gates of hell or anything like that. It's unknown. We don't know what it is. And again, anyone that claims to know what it is straight away, and to how to get rid of it without, investigating it a little bit, then they're talking rubbish in my opinion. So I hope you've it's not necessarily enjoyed that, because it's a very distressing situation for the family. But hopefully it's opened your eyes as to what some families are going through in the within this kind of field. Really, they're living through this every single day, any hour of the day. As she said, she does get a bit of a rest now, but it only seems that that's the time that this thing is taking to recharge itself, and it clearly is using some kind of electricity. £60 a week on electricity bill is absolutely ludicrous. To be getting through, batteries in the camera. I think she's got 4 or 5 cameras set up around the house, and she's gone from changing them weekly to every other day. That's just silly. This thing is draining the batteries. It's draining the electricity in the house to try and I guess power itself up, which isn't good. So again, anyone that has any suggestions or anything that they can throw my way or Kelly's way to help this situation, that would be great. And hopefully we can just try and get Kelly and her family's life back on track. Just rounding this out now, you may remember I mentioned to you previously that I'm currently in the early stages of setting up a conference in the West Midlands, in the Birmingham area. And that's with the help of Dave Hodrian from BUFOG, Birmingham UFO Group, good friend of mine. And we're getting ever closer now, so we've actually booked the location. So the location is at where BUFOG have their monthly meetings, and that's at Hot Shots Snooker Club in Oldbury. It's in Birmingham, and actually not in the snooker room. There's a big function room on the side that we're going to be using, and it's a good location. It's near a train station, plenty of road parking there for the people that are going to come along. And the next stage for us is just to get the speakers lined up. So we have a date as well. So we're going with the 10th of April 2021. So early next year, really. And tickets will be going on sale as soon as we've nailed down our speakers, and we can, we don't want you to be buying tickets if you don't really know what to expect. So once we've got the speakers lined up and we can have a proper description of the day, we'll start to sell tickets. Not quite sure on the pricing structure yet, but speaker wise, we've got our speakers lined up. We just need to hook them in, shall we say, and get them on board. And hopefully they'll agree. It's going to be an all dayer, so we're going to start about 10 o'clock or so. Each speaker's going to have an hour. Myself and Dave will be doing a joint lecture. Not quite sure on the topic yet, but we'll hammer that down. And yeah, we're going to have a mix of UFO and paranormal. So there's going to be a couple of speakers talking about ghost or mediumship or spiritual stuff, and we're going to have a couple of speakers talking about UFOs, aliens, and if I can get who I want on board, we should have a star from the Ancient Aliens show as well coming along to give a talk. So if you live in the area, even if you just live in England, it'll be worth the ticket money. Keep an ear out, keep an eye out, and I'll give you more details as it progresses, and as we book the speakers, we'll announce them. I can point you towards the Facebook page that we're going to set up, and point you towards where you can grab your tickets from. So that's it, really. I hope you enjoyed this show. Please do let me know of any ideas if you have for a co-host. If you'd like me to just carry on with me, if you'd like me to carry on and get another permanent co-host, or if you have a podcast host that you like from another show, give me the details and I can contact them about coming on and being a guest co-host every now and then. Maybe that could work. And of course, Kelly, anyone that's got any suggestions or is able to help in any way at all with Kelly's situation, please let me know. So that's it for now. Also, we've broke our 500 listeners mark on our Anchor site, and this Anchor shares our podcast out to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all these different platforms. And also, we're getting a worldwide listening base now. So we have listeners in Honduras. So if you're listening in Honduras, hello. Thank you very much for tuning in all the way over there. Listeners in Spain, in Germany, Scotland. If I've missed anyone out, I apologise. It is getting quite far spread now. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for listening in, for increasing our subscribers numbers, for sharing us around, and for enjoying the show. You make it worthwhile doing, really. When I first set out to do this, I didn't dream of getting the listens that we get or the subscribers that we get. It was really just so I could talk to some interesting people, and whatever happened along the way happened. But now you guys are making it far more enjoyable. You're making me, almost want to do this more and more, because I know that you're out there listening and enjoying the show. So, any feedback, as always, please leave a comment. Share us around, tell your friends to listen, tell your friends to subscribe, because we are growing and it's fantastic. And so, again, thank you very much for tuning into this episode, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Take care.